In March, I had just one thing on my mind. I wanted to marry my girlfriend. We'd been together for over a year and I was obsessed with her. We were both living with our parents at the time, so instead of struggling to move out independently, we could do it together. I couldn't stop thinking about popping the question all throughout March, so by the time it was about to be April, I just couldn't wait any longer. It just happened to be April Fool's Day when I went over to her place with the intention of asking her to marry me. There was no April Fool's prank though. I was 100% serious. My girlfriend's parents weren't home that evening, so as usual, when we had the opportunity, we started to make out within a few minutes of me being there. Usually, we'd take it to the bedroom, but that time it just happened right there on the couch. Afterwards, we were cuddling and I was super nervous. She could tell, too. She started giggling because she thought it was because of her, but she didn't know that I was busy in mind trying to work up the courage to pop the big question. Finally, I manned up and did it. Hey, I wanted to ask you something.
Okay. What is it?
Will you... I'm sorry, I'm just nervous as hell.
Hey, just spit it out. You shouldn't be nervous around me. You weren't nervous 5 minutes ago.
Okay, will you marry me?
I'm sorry, but no.
What?
It's just too early, you know?
No, I don't understand. Wait, this is an April Fool's prank, right? You're joking, right?
No, I'm not joking, okay?
You... How could you do this to me? You bitch! When she said no, I was crushed. I kept trying to get her to admit that she was joking. It had been an April Fool's prank. It had to be. But every time I told her to say she was joking, to admit that she really wanted to say yes, she said no even louder. I couldn't handle it. I stood up, started pacing around and crying. I tried to hold back my tears, but I wanted to show her how she'd hurt me, how she'd ruined our chances of having a life together. Instead of apologizing, she started telling me to calm down, that it wasn't that serious, and that I was out of control. Before I knew it, she was screaming at me to leave, and I was screaming back at her. All my love for her turned to anger because of what she did to me. I'd done everything for her. I was trying to promise my life to her, and she just passed it up. With one word, she proved I meant nothing to her. She had to face the consequences. I had to make her pay. I went into the kitchen and grabbed a knife. Then I came back to the living room and ran at her. The last thing I remember is the look of fear on her face. The next thing I knew, I was covered in blood. The knife was clenched in my hand. I couldn't believe what I had just did. It didn't feel real. I dropped the knife and ran out of the house, leaving her right there on the living room floor for her parents to find. I ran all the way home and hid. The first thing I did was take off all my blood-soaked clothes and get in the shower, but suddenly my legs were too weak for me to stand. I just sat in the bathtub with the water flowing over me, watching the blood roll down the drain. No matter how much water ran over me, I couldn't get clean. It couldn't wash away what I did. It's not real. I didn't mean to poke her. It was just an April Fool's joke. I'll wake up tomorrow and she'll call me. We'll sort it all out. I didn't mean to. I swear. It was just April Fool's. It was just April Fool's. I was pranking her. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. By the end of the day, I was arrested. Her parents must have been devastated when they got home, seeing their daughter like that. I think about it every day. What kind of monster was I in those few seconds? I have nightmares of being her. I can't even scream or breathe. If only she had said yes. It's been a long time since that day, but the memory hasn't faded. Every year on April Fool's Day, I know I'm gonna have that dream. This story was inspired by a horrific April Fool's incident that happened on Saturday, March 30th. A man named Rehan Ahmed allegedly took out his girlfriend, Farida Khatun, for turning down his marriage proposal with a knife. The incident took place at Shalini Ground in Jayanagar, V Block. Reports say that the victim and the accused were in a relationship for more than a year. The victim happened to be a mother of 2 daughters and worked at a spa. The accused worked as a spare car driver. The duo first met in 2022 at a spa and eventually entered into a relationship. After an outing, Rahan proposed to Khatun for marriage. However, she denied his proposal. Rahan assumed that it had to be an April Fool's prank, but things went left when he came to the realization that this was in fact a reality, and that's when Rahan lashed out with a knife and did what he did. A coconut seller nearby saw the victim lying in a pool of her own blood and subsequently called the police. By the time the victim was found, the accused had fled the spot. However, later on, the accused surrendered at the police station. This is downright one of the most disturbing April Fool's incidents to occur in the 21st century.
I'll never forget my friend's April Fool's prank. Kyle was always a clown. I was going to college to become an engineer, and he was in almost all of my classes. I worked and studied diligently, but Kyle never took anything seriously. He constantly distracted himself and me from getting anything ever done. Kyle would also try to convince me to skip class every day, but I never let him be that much of a bad influence on me. I encouraged him to have good attendance, because tuition was expensive as hell, and engineering is one of those majors when you can't miss class, or else you'll be screwed. Unfortunately, despite all my efforts, he didn't show up to 90% of our classes. One day, I snuck in some text to see where he was at, but I never got any reply, even after the lecture was over. I managed to record the whole thing on my phone to help him catch up whenever I saw him next, but I didn't know when that would be. We weren't roommates, so I didn't see him after school either. I chalked it up to Kyle sleeping in or just flat out ignoring my calls and messages, so I wasn't worried about it and went on with my business. I got through all my studying for the evening, then I played a few rounds of card, then eventually went to bed. Then, in the middle of the night, I woke up to Kyle FaceTiming me. I rolled over to look at my phone, but after thinking about it for a second, I didn't answer. I was extremely tired and had class in the morning, so having him yapping in my ear about something unimportant was the last thing I needed. So, I set my phone away and ignored it. Not even a minute later, the ringing started back up again. My phone was on vibrate, but the reverberation through my nightstand was super loud, so it was annoying as hell. I kept hanging up, but Kyle would call me back to back 3 or 4 more times. I was about to give in an answer if he had called for a 5th time, but he didn't. Relieved, I quickly fell back asleep. About 2 hours later, around 4 in the morning, I woke up again to Kyle calling me. I was finally fed up, but I saw he had called me 10 times before I noticed. I answered, fully ready to tell him off, but then I saw his face, and I realized he had been serious the entire time. Kyle was in a dark room, and his face was distraught, like he'd been crying for hours. His face was bright red and pouring sweat. Worst of all, there was a noose around his neck. I got up from my bed and started talking at full volume, completely disregarding my roommates, saying,
Kyle, what the hell is happening? Where are you?
I don't know. They just took me and said they're gonna kick the stool from under me if I try to escape.
The stool? Shit! Oh God, please tell me you're joking!
You have to come find me. Please, I'm begging you. Save me.
No! Kyle! Oh shit! I'm gonna call the cops! Kyle!
April Fools!
You sick piece of shit! Screw you!
I was so unbelievably pissed at Kyle. He played practical jokes on me before, but nothing to that intensity. He'd only tricked me for maybe 30 seconds, but I was honestly traumatized. There was no chance of me going back to sleep after that, so I just left my bedroom and made coffee. I had to explain to my roommates why I woke them up screaming, and they offered to help me get back at him since we still had all of the April Fool's Day ahead of us. but I honestly wasn't in the mood for more jokes. Our class was at 8 a.m., so I had plans to get at him when I saw him. I couldn't believe he was willing to miss an entire day of class just weeks before finals, all for some idiotic prank that I would literally lose sleep over. Unfortunately, he was a no-show again. This made me even more mad, as I figured he was avoiding his just punishment. But then, later that day, I was pulled into the dean's office by a couple of cops and got hit with the most devastating news of my life. Kyle's April Fool's prank had gone horribly wrong and turned deadly. He was found by his roommates in the morning with the stool he'd been standing on tipped over and his phone on the ground. I was the last person he called, so they questioned me if I knew anything about the incident. I told them about the prank he pulled on me, which is why I didn't call for help. Unfortunately, because I hung up on him, I had no idea what happened just seconds after I got off the phone. Ever since then, I've felt this immense weight of guilt hanging over me. If I had just stayed on the phone, I could have called his roommates or rushed over there myself and saved him. Instead, I did nothing, and now he's gone. This story was inspired by a horrific incident regarding an April Fool's prank turned deadly after a male played with a rope during a video call to a friend and accidentally slipped. This prank ultimately cost him his life. The incident occurred at the victim's residence on Monday. He was identified as Abhishek Raghuvanshi. April the 1st is celebrated as April Fool's Day, with people playing tricks on their friends, family, and colleagues. But in Abhishek's case, it was his last day. The postmortem of the male has since been conducted.
This story happened around April Fool's. My family runs an aircraft service and repair business that my dad started years ago. My mom does the numbers, and I'm learning to replace my dad as CEO when he retires. It started out as a small-scale venture, but now we own and operate out of a hangar at our city's biggest airport. Through my family's hard work, we've become quite successful and wealthy. I plan to keep that success up when my father leaves, so I've spent my adult work life learning how to run the company. I would often spend late nights at the cubicle area at the hangar, buried in paperwork and emails. I was basically the only person working in the building, so you can imagine how creepy it was being there just by myself, working in such a large building. I would hear noises every so often, but I just brushed it off as possibly some rats lurking around the building. I eventually got used to it though. However, on this one night, everything changed. On the night of April Fool's, I was working late at my cubicle, typing away on the computer. I would bounce around from the office to the hangar every so now and then, due to my line of work. I remember texting my dad, giving him an update that I'd be home soon. After sending the text, I left the hangar and started walking to the parking lot just outside the airport. The parking lot is usually sparsely populated at that hour, but as I walked toward my car, I noticed a van parked next to it. Given how empty the area was, I wouldn't expect to have anyone parked next to me. They were also parked rudely close to my driver's side door, so I knew it would be a crunch getting into my car. I disregarded it and squeezed between the two vehicles, then opened my door and started to slide in through the small gap. That's when I heard something loud from right behind me, the van's side door sliding open.
Help! Somebody help!
In the blink of an eye, my life changed. One moment I was on the way home to my parents, and the next I'm in the back of a stranger's van being held at knife point by masked kidnappers who were screaming in my face. I quickly realized I wasn't getting out of this situation by overpowering anyone, so I tried to go along with them the best I could, hoping that somehow if I complied, I would get home safely.
Is this an April Fool's prank? Please tell me it is! Shut up and run your pockets! Give us everything you own before I start cutting off your fingers!
Fine, here, take it! My ID? But there's like $200 in there. Why don't you take that?
This address! Do you still live with your parents? No, no, please don't hurt them. I'm begging you. Quiet! Now listen to me, you whiny little shit. I don't care about your fat asshole of a dad or the used up old hag you call your mother. All I want is their money, and you're gonna help me get it from them. Understand?
Okay, I'll do anything you want.
Good. Now tell us where your mommy and daddy live so we can go on a little ride.
I stayed up waiting for my son to come home for hours. He texted me at 1:30 saying he was on his way. Without traffic, it should have taken him 30 minutes to get home, but 3 a.m. came and went, and then 4 a.m. Then, before I knew it, I was sitting in the living room at 5 in the morning with no sign of my son. No calls, no texts, nothing. Then, I finally heard the doorbell ring. God damn it, that better be him.
What the? Robert? What the hell's going on? No. Ah!
I called the cops immediately as soon as I read the ransom note. I told them I was willing to do anything to get my son back. We did everything the note told us to do. We got the money together, we said we were ready to send it, but then we heard nothing. Weeks went by and nothing happened. Our last resort was to offer a reward to the public for anyone who could help us, but nobody has given us anything useful. It's been so long since I've seen my son. I just want him back. I just want him to come home. Every day, I wish this was all just one big April Fool's prank, but as every passing day goes by, I'm faced with the grim reality that this was real.
Ah!
This story was inspired by a disturbing incident that happened on April Fool's Day. 2 days after their 26-year-old son was kidnapped in Lakeland, Thomas and Pamela Wiles received a ransom note. They followed the instructions to get their son back, but something went wrong. On Friday, 3 weeks after the April 1st abduction of Robert Arthur Wiles, his parents had no word of his whereabouts and do not know whether the kidnappers received their response. They and the FBI appealed to the public for help and to the kidnappers to contact the Wiles family again. The kidnapped son's name was Robert Wiles, who was a business development manager for National Flight Services. Robert's mom told reporters, "We are worried about Robert. We love Robert, and we are terribly concerned about his safety. We want him to know that his family loves him. We care about him, and we want him to come home. If anyone knows where he is, we need to speak with Robert. We'll do anything we can to get our son back and bring him home safe. Our son knows how to reach us. He has our number, and the only thing that matters to us is for our son to come home safely." The family offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to their son's safe return. FBI agents have since searched the areas in Ohio, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Thailand, as well as Lakeland and the greater Orlando and Sarasota areas, but Robert's whereabouts remain unknown.